Hey, welcome to Fireside Technique and the third installment of our rotary tattoo machine series. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Dan Kubin's Sidewinder version 6. You might remember, if you've been following this show for a while, that I did kind of a first impressions video on this machine shortly after I bought it. And since then, I've learned a lot more about it. I've been using it for maybe 8 or 10 months at this point. Ty Pilata, who's doing these machine reviews with me, has been using the Sidewinder since version 3. So we're going to offer our thoughts on the machine. We both really like it. I think it's a great liner, one of the best liners that we've used. Like I mentioned before, this entire series was kind of haphazardly thrown together as a test. So the audio, video, light quality, all of that kind of stuff is not top notch. But if you guys like it, I think we may do a more polished, better thought out version of this series or something like it. So make sure to thumb us up and comment if you do like it. If you don't like it, don't just say I don't like it. Maybe let us know why you don't like it. So if we do attempt it again, we can make it better. So thanks a lot for supporting what we do, and I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, I want to do this next one. I want to start this next one. I don't want to. Whenever, so you guys talked me into. Where are you going?
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh.
Getting closer to the table without bumping the table.
Oh, good thinking. Because it's noisy when you bump the table. So you guys.
That's what the grooves in the grip are for that aren't practical. To keep it from falling off the table.
Right.
Okay.
So you guys convinced me to buy this machine, the Sidewinder.
Yeah.
And as soon as I bought it, the first thing that I did was a review on it. But really, as our viewers have so kindly pointed out to me, it wasn't so much a review as it was a first impressions video. I've been using it for 6 months or so now, and I will say this thing, for the job that it does, I've never had a machine that does it any better than that. Yeah. And and it's a straight liner. And thanks to Robin, who's lounging on the... You don't have to pan over. Nope. Thanks to Robin, who's lounging over here. I just recently learned to pepper or not stipple. What do you call that? Peppering?
It's peppering, sure.
Yeah. I would have had no idea this thing would run on 2.5 volts, but it does. So what are your thoughts on Dan Kubin's machines?
This thing is definitely a professional's tool. If you know what you're doing or you have somebody working with you that knows how to set this thing up, he sends them and you can drop a line, no problem with them. If you want it to hit a little stronger, a little softer, it's a very small adjustment that you would get from loosening this set screw here and adjusting this up and down here, which is going to set your timing either closer to this top line or further down to the second line, which is what Dan talks about in a video. And what we found is that closer to the second line for me, it's a harder hit. Closer to the first line for me is a little softer of a hit.
Yeah.
So I keep these things a little bit past the middle, closer to that bottom line here. And I'm dropping 14 lines, no problem, 11 lines and 9 lines all day long with this thing. And I use it on the harder setting. So I have an RCA set up on mine where he's got a clip cord on his. So my ground is here on my RCA and my positive is up here on the top. This would be positive up on a clip cord. I only use this thing on the hard setting because I'm only using my machine for anything from a 9 to a 14 liner. I can still run a 7 on it perfectly fine. I don't use it as a fine liner. So positive up is all I use. You set an RCA up on this thing, and you can use it along with your rotary machines or your pen style machines or whatever other rotary you want that's rotary RCA specific. I don't see the necessity, because I'm using it for power lines, to have the softer hit by reversing my clip cord, which is a really cool feature if you want to run some softer lines.
Yeah. It doesn't strike me as the type of machine that you want to use to run soft lines. It feels like...
It doesn't. Yeah. But when you get into her case, where she's running this thing for pepper shading with a 3-liner, she's using it on a lower voltage, and she's dropping in lines and doing pepper shading on a lower voltage, still on the hard setting. So this machine is going anywhere from 3 volts to do pepper shading to 6 volts to drop a nasty line fast on an 11 or a 14.
Yeah.
It's a very versatile tool, and I can tell you from using every type of pen style machine out there, including ejecta machines, you name a rotary, and I've tried it. You can get through lines with anything, but nothing is going to get you in and out efficiently and get you on to the next step in a tattoo faster than this machine.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was blown away by it. It feels. We did a podcast recently with Dan Whipke, and he had just started using this, and he was like, "God, it feels like I'm cheating." And he was like, "It's the easiest thing to put lines in with that I've ever used." And
I'm not trying to cut myself out of a career, but I want to get efficiently and cleanly through my line work. And when I have to push with a rotary machine and use my wrist more and fight more and stretch more to get those lines in versus this thing which drops them in off the needle tip, I stretch the skin just as tight, but it literally drops in like I'm using a pen or a Sharpie marker. And when those lines come back, and I can compare both on clients I do large work on, the one who I used a rotary machine on, the line work is a little more scarred, it's a little less dense, it's a little less crisp. This thing looks like I dropped a line on paper. When it's perfectly healed, it's just as black, it's just as crisp on all the edges, there's no bleed out. Because I got in and out fast, I did very little trauma. This is the way to go.
Yeah.
It gets me through that line work process really fast on large tattoos so that I can spend more of that time that needs to be spent focusing on shading and color.
Yeah.
I would rather spend an hour on an outline on a big ass tattoo and spend 4 hours shading it than spend 2 hours on an outline and go, oh, we got to get you to come back.
Yeah.
It just lets me get through this process faster to make the customer happy, but also I get more work done in a day, which justifies your pay scale much better to be able to get through a process quick and efficiently. And nobody's saying rushing. We're not rushing at all. It's just that this thing will do the job fast to let you spend more time on your shading.
Yeah. Let me ask a question, something that I haven't experimented much with. So there's this set screw in the armature bar, and I back it off because it gives what Dan calls a silent option. It's not truly silent, but it's closer to a quiet machine. I know that it's less punchy that way. I'm so spoiled on quiet machines, I don't even try it turned up. Is there a significant difference if I turn that set screw in where it's actually
quieter versus harder?
Quieter versus louder. Yeah.
He developed this armature bar for people who want a quieter machine. Lots of people want a quiet machine. Me too. I've been using rotary since 2003.
Yeah.
I can tell you that, put in a set of headphones or turn your music up a little louder because you want this thing set to snap. You want this thing to hit harder. Don't work in the bog zone if you're trying to get a large line done. Just accept the noise from the machine is part of the process. Nothing is ever going to take that out of the tattoo process. And if you embrace that's part of it, your client will accept that it doesn't need to be silent, and you don't have to bullshit them and tell them that, this machine or this machine here is going to get the job done the same, and just say, hey, you know what, man, throw your earbuds in if it really bothers you, or we'll throw some earplugs in, or enjoy the fact that you're getting tattooed and the sound is part of the process. Because this machine on its hardest hit, dropping any kind of line over a 7 is going to make your life easy. It's going to get you through your line work twice as fast as it normally would without rushing. And your client's going to be happier at the end that you got through it faster because it was a lot less pain for a lot less time.
Okay. I haven't tried it.
Softer setting for me I've done.
Yeah.
Even with this machine, when you set it to the softer setting, I was doing larger lines and they were not coming back as crisp and as solid. Just let it make noise and let it be aggressive, let it do its job, and you do less trauma on the skin, and you'll get a much cleaner line when you're done if you just set it closer to that harder setting. Let that thing hit the pin more than it hits this O-ring. That's something. Much happier with your results.
Yeah, something to point out. He does have these O-rings that are built into the armature bar, and so that's the difference, is whether it makes contact with this O-ring or whether it makes contact with the pin. Huh?
You're slowing and softening your snap.
Yeah.
The more you hit that O-ring than you do the pin. You want a little bit of compression on that O-ring, but not much.
Yeah.
The less compression you put on this O-ring, the faster you're going to drop your line in, the faster it's going to heal, the better that line's going to look, and the less pain you're going to give your customer.
We should talk about spitting on these machines. It is an issue that a lot of people complain about. Dan talks about turning the needle upside down so that the needle solder is on the bottom of the bar rather than
the bar is towards the back of the tube.
Yeah.
The needle is on the top of the tube.
Yeah.
If you look at the way a tube is designed, we don't have one on hand.
No.
The tip of the needle is in the middle of the tube. So if you were to take a needle that's soldered on the back side of the tube, it's naturally towards the bottom, where the needle tip on a plastic tube or even a metal tube is not. It's in the middle. If you flip it upside down, the arc from the armature bar to the needle, the tube tip, is more in line. It's more linear. So if you flip it upside down, it's not upside down. We all tattooed with these things right side up for years. But it makes more sense if you flip that thing upside down. Your needle is now more in line and linear from your armature bar to your needle point. So give it an arc, the whole needle down, and turn it upside down. On most needles, your needle point is, instead of it being counterclockwise like we're used to, is going to be clockwise. The opening on your needle loop is going to be on the clockwise side. That's how you know your needle is on the top and your bar is behind it. That's going to cause less spitting because the angle is correct from your armature bar to your needle point. It's not fighting it on an uphill stroke like it is normally.
He also talks about using round tip tubes instead of diamond tips, but you found the opposite.
Yeah, so Dan said stay away from diamond tip tubes because if you don't have them set up just right, they're going to spit more. I find that rounds spit more for me, so I use a diamond. Once I have that diamond set where it needs to go, I don't have any spitting at all. Going as high as like 6.2 volts, I have zero spitting.
Yeah.
If you keep cranking it, you're going to get spitting. You're always going to get a little bit of spitting here and there if it's not set just right on a higher voltage, just because of the laws of physics.
Yeah.
You've got metal slapping against metal as hard as it possibly can, which is why you're dropping these lines as clean as you're dropping them to begin with. Yeah. So you're going to have to expect that with Murphy's Law, you're going to get some spitting. If you don't want spitting, use a cyclical rotary that's not going to give you any punch so that it's smooth, so that there's no spitting.
Yeah.
You're going to fight like hell to stretch the skin and drop that line, or accept the fact that a little bit of spitting is part of the process because it's making your job that much easier.
What I've learned to do with this thing is just, and I'm kind of like you. I have found sometimes it doesn't spit at all. I mean, other times it spits a lot.
Yeah.
And what I found is I just dip in my ink cap and just hold it to the side for a split second, let it spit, and then come to it.
So if you're like me and you don't use a foot switch, you're going to deal with that spitting a little more than somebody who's got the ability to, leave it on off, and then they touch the skin and they start it up. It's going to spit, but you're already in the skin. It doesn't matter. For me, I try to get rid of the spitting as much as possible because I don't use a foot switch. And if it is, I just let it run for a second, like Jake said, and go with the line. I'd rather do that all day long than fight with a machine that's not made to drop the line as easy.
Yeah, it's a small price to pay. So
Very.
I think that's good for this machine. But I'll have to say this is hands down the best single pass liner I've ever used in my entire.
Everybody,
tattoo
I just
career.
have to say, this seems like a really large investment. If you're a beginning tattoo artist and you're working in a shop at 50-50 or 60-40 and you're not established, you can still save enough money to put on the side to drop like $750, $800 on this thing. It's going to make your job a lot easier. Don't buy the Italian version of this fucking thing. Don't buy the Chinese version of this thing. All of those machines that you're going to pay half the price for, it's going to give you half of what he's figured out. This is version 6. Every single step he's made up on this fucking thing is an improvement. And any money you're going to save, you're going to see in your tattoos.
Yeah.
This is something, I've never had one of these things fail on me. I've never sent one back for a repair or a motor problem or any kind of repairs or maintenance. I take care of my shit. I don't drown this fucking thing in Maticide. I keep it clean. You're going to spend less money buying one of these than you're going to buying, not to knock other countries. There's a Russian version of this thing out. That's half the price. That's half as good. There's a Chinese version of this thing out. That's half the price. It's half as good. There's an Italian version of this thing that's on Tattoo Gear right now. that this guy's selling, and I'm sure he'd rather trade it for a V6, but doesn't want to say he wants to trade it for a V6.
Yeah.
Just save the money and buy this thing, or don't buy one until you have the money to afford this machine. Period.
Yeah, I didn't know there were that many knockoffs of it.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
It doesn't surprise me.
And they're inferior versions of everything he's worked hard to improve on. He's not coming out with a version 5 and a version 6 to get more money out of you because he's already saturated the market with what he already sold. Every single step up is a little more tweaking and refinement, and I can tell you because I've been working with these since the V3. I haven't been on them since the beginning, so there's other guys that can talk more about that. But V3 to V6, and they're all great machines. Every one of them is a little different.
Yeah.
And I love this thing. It's my favorite machine.
I agree. So there's our opinions on the Sidewinder version 6 by Dan Kubin. We both like it a lot. Next episode, we're going to change gears a little bit and focus on power supplies. We're going to compare the Musotoku power supply to a critical atom. So I hope you guys will tune in for that. Be sure to thumb us up and leave a comment. And thank you again for supporting what we do.